Thank you all for joining us. And as you know, we are Mendability. We are currently working in your environment at the moment with sensory enrichment therapy. For those of you that don't know a ton about us, what it's all about, how to do it, that's what this is. This is our 1 hour training. And it is the Coles Notes version of an 8 hour course and a 3 hour course. So this will bring you up to speed really quickly. Just a quick background, Mendability's been around over 30 years. So what we do isn't new to us, but doing it in your environment is. And we're really excited about that. We started working directly with families over 30 years ago. We've worked in school districts, we've worked in addiction recovery centers, and the real appeal of working in a center like yours is all of you, really. That's what makes the difference, is you're there every day. There's more of you helping the kiddos, and you're consistent. With families, as you may or may not have experienced, the one thing you can count on is sometimes they're consistently inconsistent. So our program is to help those kiddos make their lives easier, less pain, and hopefully, as a result of that, make all of your lives easier. But it's you that will make it happen. And so in this quick 1 hour, both Claudie Pomaris, who is our co-founder and program director, and Kim Pomaris, who is our CEO and also co-founder, are going to show you the Coles Notes version of Mendability. Kim.
Thanks, Tara. I just admitted one more person into the room, and now I'm going to share my screen. I love to start with this picture because to me, it says everything we want to say about our program. When we do this live, and I wonder if one of you would dare to volunteer and unmute yourself, could you describe what you see on the screen? What do you think is happening in her mind? What do you think she's experiencing?
For me, when I look at this, I feel calm because flowers typically have some sort of strong scent. So you're able to kind of focus in the moment with that flower and just be present for that moment.
That's lovely. That's perfect. What I like about this picture is whatever she's having, I want some of it. So we're going to tell you where our program comes from, some of the clinical evidence to treat developmental disorders, and participating, what it looks like to participate in this program. This is our team. This is us. Like Tara said, we've been around for a long time. We started about 30 years ago, providing this new form of therapy to children with developmental and learning disabilities. The results were beyond our expectations. After clinical trials, Mendability now offers a sensory enrichment therapy to over 3,500 families. In 2019, we were approached by a large school district in the United States to see if our program could be adapted to their special education curriculum to help children move into less and less intrusive environments. Okay, so the name of our program is Sensory Enrichment Therapy, and it comes from the field of neuroscience called environmental enrichment that looks at the brain's ability to change its structure and what kind of sensory, motor, cognitive, social experiences can activate these growth and repair mechanisms. Sensory enrichment is a subset of that. We focus especially on sensory and motor experiences because these two have the most clinical evidence showing a direct link to a change in brain development, cognitive abilities, sensory processing, movement control, mood, sleep, eating habits, etc. It's a brain stimulation program. It induces an elevated state of neuroplasticity, and we've developed a way to direct the surge of activity and growth to specific brain functions, and which brain functions we work on will depend on the individual. So what we give to your clients is what you see in the top right of the screen. What you're seeing here is neurons, slides of the brain. And they're probably somewhere in the left-hand side. And what we want to do is create new connections, bring in some new nerve cells, and we want to give them what you see in the right. With more brain, you can do more. And so you'll see improvements in mood, you will see improvements in cognitive abilities, even motor abilities. We've got stories about skating, about football, we're going to see improvements in eating habits. And probably the first thing you're going to see is improvement in sleep. And wherever this happens, it's always a breakthrough. And we'd love to bring that to your clients. So this is an evidence-based program, but this is also a clinically proven program. Our program was a subject of randomized controlled trials with a population of children with autism, well, populations of children with autism, because there were several clinical trials conducted. In the chart in the bottom right, you see a number 1, and that's the chart that represents the percentage of children who improved by 5 points or more on the childhood autism rating scale. And 5 points on that scale is significant. It's not they grew because the pilots lasted 6 months. So, they didn't get, they weren't feeling better in the after test compared to the before test. They didn't outgrow certain skills. 5 points is significant. And to have about 5 to 10% improve when you do standard care like occupational therapy and ABA and physiotherapy, because all of the kids in the trial participated in those programs. And so to improve by 5 to 10% is normal. That's what you typically see over a period of 6 months of that kind of therapy. And then the children in the enrichment group also did the standard care therapy, but they had that extra layer of sensory enrichment. And that group, 42% of the children improved by 5 points or more on that scale. And in fact, the results were so significant that the scientist who published the study decided to not release the results yet until after he was able to do a replication study. So there were more kids, more tests, and when they saw they were able to replicate the same and get the same results, then they publish both studies almost at the same time. And the team got an award for the best neuroscience paper of the year by the American Psychological Association. The second graph you see, the one that's labeled number 2, is the percentage of children who no longer qualified for their initial diagnosis after 6 months. The question was, if 42% improved by 5 points or more on that scale, how many of them improved so much that when they're re-diagnosed, their diagnosis is different? And 21% of them no longer qualified for their initial autism diagnosis, had moved up by at least one whole segment on the autism spectrum. And we have some naysayers say, well, that means that 80% didn't. Well, first of all, it's 6 months, okay? And second of all, look at the alternative. The alternative was 0. None of them had changed in so much that they qualified for a new diagnosis. So again, this is what we're hoping to bring to your organization. So what do the exercises look like? It's short, fun, hands-on activities. In the top right, they're smelling, and in the bottom right pictures, they're holding fuzzy things. One of them's heavy, one of them's light. All of this takes a few seconds, and it's super simple to do, and it's not boring work. Okay, it's really fun hands-on activities, and those are the types of activities, and they're designed to trigger that elevated state of neuroplasticity, to trigger that surge of activity and growth in specific brain functions. It can be done one-on-one, or you can do a group. And in fact, if you have multiple several clients in one house, then maybe they can do it together. They can do it to each other if you want to create that bond. The quote I like to end my introduction with is this one. This is, I think, the most hopeful quote, because it talks about, this one came from a pilot in a school district. So it was a student whose behaviors prevented him from being able to integrate with his other classmates. But within weeks, he progressed enough that they updated his profile and they said, okay, let's move him to spend at least some time with his peers. And he literally aced it. And again, this is what we want to bring to our organization. What we will do as a company to support you as we implement this program is we'll give you some training. So this is, your introduction to the program, but we have a 3-hour course and an 8-hour course you can take online at your own pace. It's a bunch of videos and some quizzes at the end of each video, and then you move on to the next video. There's some software. You can use an iPad, or you can go online with a web browser, and it'll show you what exercises to do with a video demonstration. You can even check off what you've done, so we can send a report of how consistent you are with this program to your program managers. And obviously, we're a help button away from being able to answer any question you have. And we want to be as directly accessible because you are performing a great work, and we want to support you as much as we can. So Claudia, you can now take the floor and tell them about some of the exercises that they're going to do.
Yeah, what I like in your presentation is that you really explain it is short, it is fun, or at least it is short. It is a therapy, so sometimes the kids, the young adults may be resisting. You always find a way to still do something. And in fact, I have an example that happened recently where one teenager was becoming very resistant for the sake of being resistant, I suppose. And he would say when given a scent, I hate it. So the trick was, oh, you don't like this one? How about this one? I hate it. Okay, what about this one? So at the end of this little trial, he had smelled way more than if he had smelled only one, something that he enjoyed. So we don't want to trick the people we work with, but we know it's going to be good for them and eventually raise their mood. So the simplicity of the exercises, and also the fact that they are very short, is based on the fact that we don't teach a skill. We are talking to their brain. In this exercise, we combine things that typically in life are never happening together, like touching and smelling. If we are smelling either a piece of food or perfume, we are not manipulating really in an organized manner different textures. Every time we do something that's new, our brain is going to build connections. And you may already know, and maybe not, that the exercises that we give you will last about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, where every day you do the same one. That means that it will give the brain the amount of time needed to build those brand new connections. They may not be useful specifically for activities with smell and touch. Any new connection is becoming a tool for learning, a tool to be aware of your body and feel better. So the science behind it, as Kim was mentioning, initially, all the research was done on the animal model because we can, unfortunately, for them, sacrifice the animal and observe, was the brain different after a week, 2 weeks? Because with animals, it goes a little faster. And every time they did experimentations and verified, it was amazing what they could measure. And quite often they were not expecting such wonderful results. One example is the sense of smell. What does the sense of smell do? Why is it important and good for the brain to smell? those scientists discovered that it was improving one of the hormones of the brain that we will talk about a little later. So this picture is a good summary of how we work. I know that in your place of work, you are going to observe the individual and you are going maybe to take notes. He has had a tantrum, or he slept so well, he liked to watch television for 2 hours. Basically, you observe behavior and you sort of draw a conclusion, and that's true for most professionals who do observation then programming. And I feel that the behavior is the end of the story. Whatever we see happens in the brain, and that's true for absolutely anything from breathing to speaking and many others. And so I would want to see where in the brain is there an issue that leads to the fact that this person is so anxious, as an example. So we would look at what cells could be not speaking properly to the other cells. That will take us all the way down to where the brain cells communicate and exchange those hormones I was mentioning. We can call them neurotransmitters or hormones, those little tiny molecules that go from one cell to the next and give messages. So how does it work? Well, that's a nice little drawing of your brain and mine probably. So those cells by the billions are talking to each other. If you see the little branches that go from one, talk and go and talk to the next cell and maybe to another. In fact, one cell can talk to 500,000 cells. So that's a very good internet system. So here we go all the way down. And this is what I like to call my workshop and your workshop, where the cells talk to each other. So the communication in the brain is happening in 2 modes. Electricity, because you saw it was like long wires going from one place to the next. And after electricity, because brain cells do not touch, I don't know if you knew that, it's a very important factor in what we do. Then the electrical message stops at the end of one cell and it opens up, we could imagine like that, little containers, and those containers will throw to the other cell maybe dopamine, maybe serotonin and others, and give the message that we're intended to transfer and then go back. So this is where we can have an influence. We can help, for example, dopamine to do a better job, flow more smoothly, be more regular. And this slide shows you, what happens to us when dopamine is good. So we are in a good mood, we're motivated, we have control of our movements, we are not that impulsive, we also have a good immune system. It is a dopamine thing. And then when dopamine doesn't work well, then we have the issue that you see here listed. Would that be severe degenerative like dementia, Parkinson, or very severe for daily function as ADHD? So those issues appear. What we hope to see happen, what we have observed in the past, is that doing those exercises that boost both the release and the production of dopamine, we can help the people, the participants, to move a little further away from the issues they are having when we start. So dopamine is your friend. It is the one that makes you happy and will help the kids to have good memories, build maybe new memories, young adults feeling like they maybe want to study better when they are doing schooling. The other neuromediator is serotonin. And I was mentioning, okay, we are working on these two simply because the research is about the increase or the improvement of serotonin and dopamine with the exercises. Serotonin, if you look at the list, is basically in charge of everything else that dopamine doesn't do. Kim mentioned that one of the first improvement is sleep. We have observed that over and over, whatever the age of the participant, because our best repair in the brain happens when we are sleeping. So the brain wants to have a good sleep. And then it is about feeding, it's about learning, relaxation, all of that. And unfortunately, you also have the list of things that will happen if your serotonin function is not doing the best of job for you. So when we are doing soft touch, discovering textures, and we are smelling, we are modifying the baseline where your participant was. We are helping the brain release at that moment more serotonin and more dopamine, and not just a little bit. And we witnessed that every time I had a chance to meet with participants, is that instantly you see their posture, their attitude change, they feel good, they are relaxed. Twice as more dopamine is flowing. And if we associate two elements, such as soft touch, it can be any other kind of sensory information that is pleasurable, then you have 4 times more dopamine released. Because it is your dopamine and your serotonin, then there is no discomfort, overdose, or side effect. This slide is beautiful because it tells us about another, and you can read it, it's about norepinephrine, that is a cousin, we could say, of dopamine, and is essential to build brand new cells. So these things happen in the moment you are doing the exercises, the protocol with the participant. The effect lasts about an hour and a half. This is the measure they did in doing functional MRI, for example, and all kinds of measures with the people. And so sometimes it could be recommended when your participant had a bad experience, a bad weekend, is very tense, to just do that exercises more than once during the day. So a real change in the brain is happening with those very simplistic exercises.
And that's the part usually where I interrupt the presentation, say, do you have some questions? Do you have some questions? But after having done this presentation so many times, there's a pattern in the questions. And usually we get the question, so what smell can I use? Is there a particular smell we should use? Claudia, do you want to answer it?
Yeah. In fact, anything that smells nice that you have available in the room or in the house that is accessible and also will be acceptable for your participant. Some will enjoy smelling a candle. It can be a hand lotion. It can be jam. It can be those lovely little hand soap or small soaps. Really, absolutely anything. There is for sure research on the impact of some smells, but we don't know much about what they do, except that lemon, orange, vanilla, and strawberry have been studied on their impact of anxiety. And there was a study recently that was particularly extraordinary because they were able to stop instantly a rush of cortisol, which is is like a panic attack, by giving a specific scent. It was in that case a lemon scent to the participants inside the functional MRI machine. So what they would do to cause stress is they would put randomly a huge bag of ice on the arm of the participant. So that when you are in the machine, you see nothing, you cannot hear anything, and suddenly that happens. I can assure you that probably I wasn't there, but I would agree. It would
I
be
wonder
stressful.
how many people knock their heads in that machine.
No, you have a cage that they put, and you have a brace. You cannot move your head. you can scream though, and probably that happened. So smell has an immediate effect, and you can use the one that your participant enjoys. It can be even ground coffee. It can be really anything. As long as they enjoy it, it will have the good effect.
And this is a slide where we explained all the different ways you can help somebody experience a smell. It's not always necessarily that you're going to open a vial of essential oil and you know place it close to their nose, because in many cases, well, it is an invasive and intrusive, you know, to come so close to somebody's face. Unless you have the connection and they have that level of comfort to let you do that. So sometimes you have to do other things. So if you're sensitive to certain smells, you're pretty much guaranteed that something like peeling an orange or something 100% natural is going to be fine. And so if you ask somebody to peel an orange, you're going to have the oils all over their hand, and their hands are going to smell like orange for a good portion of time, and they'll own that smell because now they have control over how much frequently they can smell their hand. You can soak, you can put a fragrance in the drawer where they keep their clothes, and then their clothes will smell like whatever you put in there. And then you can give them a scented hand lotion or a scented chapstick to use discreetly, you know, and they use chapstick as an excuse, but really what's happening is they're smelling. There's all sorts of things you can do. And then the other question we usually get as well is, because Claudia, you talked about touch, is what do you do when you can't really touch them because it's, you know, they won't let you, they're not comfortable with that, or maybe it's inappropriate, or maybe it triggers them in some way. The thing that you should do every time you ask them to do one of those hands-on activities is you always have to demonstrate how nice it is. When they see you having a good time, it will lower their threshold. And also, it's not something that only they have to do. It's something that's pleasant for everybody, which is one of the reasons we suggest to do them with the whole house at once. If they see that all of their buddies are having a good time and they're all doing more or less the same thing, it lowers the barrier for them. So the ideal is for them to receive the tactile sensation in a passive state so they can focus on a sensation. Because if they're the ones interacting with an object to manipulate it or to stroke it, there's all sorts of brain activity that dilutes a little bit the experience. But it's always better for them to be in control of the sensation they're getting. And it's always better for them to have a good time, because if they feel weird being touched, it may create some stress and override the experience. Is there anything you wanted to add to what I said about smell and touch?
No, but you gave very good suggestions. And I remember one of the participants was nonverbal, and he understands everything you say, but he cannot tell you yes or no if you ask if he wants something. And so the caregiver gradually, gently drew lines inside the hand, and speaking softly, giving him every now and then, moving the scent around his face so that he would breathe it in. And very gradually, for about 20 minutes, he kept handing his hand so that he would get more. So you find the way that works for the person you work with and you care for. It doesn't matter exactly, like Kim says, how you do it. It matters to do it. Another example also that I have had with a participant that was resistant because teenager who wanted to be in charge of what was going on. So he would refuse what we call the gentle claw, the bear claw, which is the random circles with the tip of the fingers on the back. So what I recommended the caregiver is to say, oh, really? You don't like it today? And as she was speaking gently, explaining how nice it would have been if she could have done it, she was stroking his arm. And so he ended up saying, no, really, I don't want it, but it was done. So we know we are giving them something that is going to help for life. So it's about just sharing in the way, again, that they will enjoy, that they will approve of, or that they will eventually like so much that they will ask for it. This exercise, you may not do this exercise the way it's presented. You may do it, for example, in the sink to avoid when someone gets a little annoyed, flying balls that sometimes may happen. But I want to explain the purpose. We have exercises that will improve the biochemistry of the brain, how the cells communicate with each other so that they communicate the right message in the right way. So we have also exercises that are about building specific connections, specific area, and Kim mentioned it at the very beginning. This one exercise invites the child or the participant to put his hands at the same time in two different temperatures. The red ball means warm water, the other cold water. This is something that we do not do in real life. It's always one temperature for the hands in the water. So that is a very, very powerful communication for a part of the brain that's been found weak in a lot of the people we work with. And it's called the corpus callosum. I call it the bridge. And it is the part of the brain that is like a small band of duct tape, if you want to see the shape and size. Here you see the picture of it. Our two sides of the brain are very independent from each other. They do very different things, but they have to work together and communicate extremely fast in order to complete tasks. And when you have a narrower or thinner corpus callosum, this communication does not happen right. And this is very often the cause for massive anxiety, where the participant knows he knows how to do it. She should be able to do it, and it's not happening. She's having a blockage. He stops mid-action. So we want to help and work and give the corpus callosum proper connection so that this communication improves. That is an exercise that will do it, because we send one very strong information from each hand, and the communication has to pass through the bridge extremely fast in order to go to the both sides at the same time in a different area, like on the top of the brain where is the sense of touch. We repeat, and then we repeat. So there will be maybe 4 or 5 of that exposure that uses something that's very important for us at Mendability, which is the speed at which the brain communicates and works. Seconds is absolutely enough to have sent an information and to have prompted the start of the growth of a new connection. And because we do it twice a day or once a day, but every day, then gradually those connections are strong, are reliable, and you will see a difference in what your participant is doing better, more enthusiastically, will want to do new things because now the communication is getting smoother. A little detail about social interaction, which is quite often an issue. It was discovered in the middle of 2021 that there is a defect on the bridge. Not only it is thinner in some of the participants, but some of them who have massive social difficulty have a defect on the bridge. So engaging in a repair project on the bridge is going to have impact on many, many aspects of life.
Claudia, do you want to explain the couple of variations on that game? You know, using like the
Yes.
wraps or the pads?
Because using water is not always feasible for many different reasons, we can modify this exercise in different ways. One would be, and we do that with infants in particular, because they are not going to be able to do this task on their own. We wrap their hands, one with wet warm and the other one with wet cold. And so wrapping, holding for 4 seconds, maybe removing the wraps and swapping hands. That you can do maybe 2 swaps max, because the temperature will not really remain, but that's plenty. We also have the option of having an ice pack wrapped in a cloth on the table, and a warm grain bag like people use for paint, and that's really easy to get. And having the participant put one hand on each, then lift their hands and move the pack and the grains, and so place the hands again on it. So you do get the same input towards the brain, which is temperature and crossing the bridge. I was going to speak French right here. Traversing the bridge. This is another option that I will reassure you, you do not need the complete 2x4 to do this exercise. No one that I know, that doesn't mean that no one on the planet, but no one I've worked with have been able to complete this exercise on day one. This little boy can. It is Kim's son. He's an athlete and a gymnast, so he could do it on his hands if we asked him. So don't feel, oh, it's easy, the little boy is doing it. So imagine yourself in front of a 2x4, holding something on your head. The point is not really about the ball. It's about the position of the arms. A lot of the participants have difficulty moving the elbows from the body. That's an issue about body awareness. So doing, or at least thinking about doing the exercise, is going to improve self-awareness. It is going to improve mental image, also because we're going to ask them, if they can, to close their eyes. Then this is completely impossible. And I certainly recommend that you try at home very cautiously. You'll find that your brain prevents you from doing this exercise because it is unsafe. The brain will not help you move without being able to look at straight ahead at something that doesn't move. This is how we move, by looking around in the environment. So what we are asking from the participant is only to think about it, to stand in front. And so you could have a box of tissue in front of them and ask them to put their foot on the box of tissue, just to create the imbalance and the impression of walk, right? Just the movement, lifting the foot. The brain is then creating pathways that don't exist, I can assure you, because that's, again, something that we would never do in life. It is new, it is kind of interesting, and it is going to build new connections in the brain. So you could be putting simply a thread on the floor on an extension cord and tell them this is what you have to walk on top, because eventually we are not going to walk. It takes usually about 2 weeks for them to be in that position and lift the foot to put it on top of, for example, a box of tissue. So the point is never, when an exercise appears to be difficult, to do the exercise. The purpose is to try. And because they try, their brain will build the connection needed to do it. Again, that will improve mental image, body awareness, and of course, communication on the corpus callosum, the bridge. So a wonderful building exercise.
Okay. So we've got a gift now. We're going to show you how we can use some of our protocols, well, one of our protocols to stop meltdowns.
Yeah, that is something that is so precious. It's a gift, it's a treasure, and we certainly encourage you to share it with as many people as you can. And when we talk about meltdown, we are talking about the real distress, the loss of control, the agitation. Some of them can start hitting themselves or make holes in the wall, or you cannot control them. Speaking will not work. You need to have an immediate effect to help this person return to feeling peaceful. So in order to get there, you need extremely simple things that will give the brain an option to settle down or continue on the mode of distress and the moment where you feel you need to put yourself to safety. So when that meltdown happens, it is usually at the end of several situations, several happenings in the day or in the hour that have raised gradually a sense of discomfort, of overload. The amygdala, which is a very, very small part of the brain, is basically on fire, containing all the rage in the world. The whole brain is involved. That's why the person cannot hear you. You should not touch that person at all. And the usual traditional way of handling is just move away and wait. Well, here is a new phase in their life and hopefully in yours where we can stop that in a few seconds. So the equipment you will need, I reassure you right away, is already in the home, in the house you're living with that participant. You need a scent, and we have a serious preference for the smell of strawberry for many reasons. And when feasible, you will need ice. So what does the smell do? We already mentioned the fact that smelling immediately increases the level of dopamine. What happens to you when your level of dopamine is boosted and the release is important? You suddenly feel in a good mood. You don't know yet what to do with it, but gradually it is going to tell the amygdala to settle down. And we like strawberry because science have experimented, have had people in the functional MRI, and they have made them smell different things. And strawberry was one of them that would travel and really settle down the activity in the amygdala. Vanilla does the same, lemon and orange. I have a very long experience with strawberry. So strawberry being in the group, I really have a preference because of my personal observation of many years.
Tell them the story about the Children's Hospital in Paris.
Yeah, I started implementing after trying from my scientific community recommendation, the therapy on healthy children. They sent me to do a study on babies who have, it's called Pierre-Robin syndrome. They have issues with their cranial nerves. They do not have a palate, and most of the time they have a tracheostomy, so a hole in the and a pipe that will help them breathe, because if you put them on their back, their tongue falls on the throat, so they choke. So those little people that are days old do have fits and meltdowns. So I would go room by room to do the therapy, and I would sometimes see this baby having a fit. So they are tied up in the crib.
Except you can't hear them because they have a tracheotomy. All you see is the sobbing and the tears. It was horrible.
Yes. And so for some mysterious reason, coincidence, or God's will, I had a scent of strawberry in my pocket all the time in my lab coat. So I would grab it and wave it in front of the face of the baby. Some of the air on the way out does go through the nose, and some come in through the trach. So 5 seconds after my bringing in the scent of strawberry, they would settle down and be peaceful and calm. So that was so impressive. That definitely determined for me. And it was 30 years ago. We did not know about the studies yet, but I knew it was going to work every time. So that is why we have basically as the strawberry on the top of the list, and use it to settle meltdowns. So a way or another, you can whiff. If you have a little bottle of soft plastic, you can whiff air and wave it towards the person. The person is breathing, excuse me. So because the person is breathing, the scent is going into the nose and the calm is starting to happen. Now, if you have the possibility to approach the participant, you have that person either hold the ice pack for 2 seconds, or you ask him to put the 2 hands on it. You can also press the ice pack for 2 seconds on the back, at the bottom of the back, right before the pants limit. And the ice is going to settle whatever was left of the rage and the meltdown. It's over. Like, you see it happen in front of you. The tragedy is done, because the cold message is a danger message for the brain. So the brain will say, okay, let's stop whatever we were doing. We need to take care of that information. It does work. It's very quick. But when you cannot approach, then the scent is plenty. May take a little longer, because if the person is tall and moves a lot, you may have to figure the best way to do it. But it does work. So it's worth doing everything you can to make it happen.
In this little video clip, a mom is recording a tantrum and recording the impact of bringing a smell to the nose of the child while he's having a tantrum. You will see at the end that he asks to hold it and he's completely calm. But you can also see that he started to calm down a lot earlier than you can see. So I'd like to see how quickly you can notice, because while he's crying, he's inhaling vigorously. And as soon as she brings the smell, we're already starting the effect of the smell. And just watch. Now, he might be loud because there's some crying involved.
Smell it. Smell it. Smell. Go in. Smell. Smell. Smell it. It's yummy. Go. Smell it. Oh. Is it yummy? Smell. Here, hold it. Smell it.
That is absolutely fabulous. And we have quite a few. Tantrums are almost cute when they are that tiny, but tantrums happen at any age, and it can be very important for the house that you have the meltdown protocol to help the person you work with and you care for. So there is something very particular, and you saw the picture of what happens in the brain when we smell. Smell really goes and hits every part of the cortex. We see something, we see the fruit, or we see a memory of a pie. We can hear what happened that day that is attached to a memory. So much happens that really the brain has no space left for the meltdown. So if you look at the picture or at a functional MRI, when we see the brain doing things, then you are amazed to see how fast one information says to the others, okay, you're done now with the meltdown, and we can just simply breathe and be happy. So once the person is calm, we recommend that you either do a nice back rub or an arm rub or any of the nice soft touch that the participant accepts, and make it last a little longer. The protocol doesn't last more than between 5-20 seconds, depending how far you are when they are smelling. But adding and completing with a combination of gentle touch and the smell is really settling that person. We have heard so many times that using the protocol regularly, in fact, leads to less meltdowns. So it is an effect that continues in time.
I have the video of Amanda ready to play if you think it's appropriate. Share my screen.
I think the amazing part of this too, Kim, is that, and I think Amanda mentions it in the video, is the individuals, the children, the adults will eventually, when we're using this protocol, will start to ask for it. Yeah. They don't like how they feel when they're having a meltdown. They're in pain and they want to get ahead of it themselves. And so I think Amanda refers to that here.
In the pre-K classroom, we have one that has a lot of meltdowns multiple times a week, just throws himself on the floor, rolls around like a fish, according to his teacher. And so he went into that mode, and she ran and got vanilla from one of the other teachers. We didn't have all our tools yet for the smells. She runs up to him. Well, she goes up to him, had not started any of this with her class. And she was like, I need you to smell this. And he's like, ah, and she's like, just kind of waving it towards him. And she's like, I just want you to smell this. Oh, it smells so good. You want to try it? And he took a whiff of it, and he looked at her, and he smelled it a few more times, and he turned around and just walked over to his desk and sat down. So there was another paraprofessional in the room, and one of our high school students that just comes in to help because that classroom needs that much help, and their mouths fall open and they go, what did you do to him? And she was like, it's vanilla.
I hope you understand now where the program comes from, that they're going to ask you to do with your clients, and that you're comfortable and doing it and confident doing it. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. Besides that, have a great day, and let's talk soon.
Thank you all so much for your time. It was a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.